Hello and welcome to My Security TV. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm with My Security Media. And this is our Friday morning episode of Tech and Sec Weekly. This morning we're going to be joined by Terry Hartmann, Vice President with the Asia Pacific with Cognitec. And we're going to be looking at facial recognition trends and recent advancements. And then we're going to swap over to David Chadwick, Director of Identity and Biometrics with Unisys, and looking specifically at GovPass, the Trusted Digital Identity Framework. And then I think we'll bring these two gents on together and generally talk about biometrics and technology and the identification process. So we should be streaming live. Let me just walk through my slides as we do. Aerospace and space, defence and national security, cybersecurity and critical technology, and cities as infrastructure is what we cover week to week, Tuesday afternoons and Friday mornings. We will tend to go for the full hour. It depends on how the conversation goes, and welcome your comments and please say good day from wherever you're listening. We are streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. It should be streaming on Facebook. Let's see what happens. We're streaming from Sydney, Australia, and Facebook have closed down news feeds on their platform. So looks like we're unaffected at this stage. We're more of a publisher than a news service, but who knows? And also, given that we're covering on space, we've just landed back on Mars. So well done to NASA and the probe that they've just put down. So it'll be interesting to be covering that as well. We are also releasing our episodes as podcasts, so I generally split them off and there'll be a podcast episode. And that goes with our interview from Tuesday with Julie Inman-Grant, the E-Safety Commissioner with Australia, looking at online safety and public awareness. And very troubling stats, I suppose, in terms of child exploitation and behaviour online with our kids. So if you are a parent or you have young children and teenagers within your sort of family environment, definitely worth having a listen, and also visiting esafety.gov.au and checking out. There's a lot of good tips and tricks there as well, and that covered off on Safer Internet Day 2021. We then swapped over to Michelle Price and Alex Scandura, CEOs with AustCyber and Stone and Chalk, and they have merged. So AustCyber is now a subsidiary of Stone and Chalk, and I do appreciate their time and transparency. That interview is now on YouTube. We've edited them off. We had a bit of a streaming issue halfway through, but yeah, definitely good insights. And even if you're interested in mergers and acquisitions, it's worth a listen also. But if you're in the cybersecurity and startup sector, again, one to watch. This episode, we've been sponsored by RSA and their Enable Zero Trust. So that's the RSA Secure ID Suite. Given that we're going to be talking about identity, that's a good one to cover off. So we'll have RSA working with us over the year, and they're also, check it out on our newsletters and on our websites as well. And then also another sponsor, Genetec. Given that we are covering off on identity, Genetec is a security management system, and we have a ANZ market update from George Moad, ANZ country manager. So check that one out. That's out as a podcast as well now. And Jeff Park, another one on video surveillance and the Skyhawk hard drives, looking at the video analytics. And this is all very, very relevant to today's topic on facial recognition and biometrics and the advancements in technology and the management software that goes along with that. And this one, in terms of Skyhawk, the storage and the analytical capability of the hard drives as well. So they're very powerful systems. So that's pretty much it from us in terms of what we're doing on the marketplace. I'll have our report of the week at the end. And again, that is also related to identity and trust. And those are the two key terms that we have. So let me bring on Terry Hartmann, and we're going to be discussing facial recognition trends and recent advancements with Cognitec. Terry, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
Good on you, mate. And just for the audience, you're welcome to say good day, press like. And if you've got any particular questions on this, welcome to do so. And Terry, thanks for coming on. It's one of those things with facial recognition. It's advanced tech. There's a few players in the market, very competitive, always a little bit of conjecture about, sort of what they say and what they can do. And I think good on you for coming on. We did have one decline as well to say, no, we're not media approved. So interesting. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. And it's one of those things that, it's a fascinating field. And it's one, particularly with COVID-19 and the wearing of masks, has also come into play a little bit more too. So we've got a presentation from you. I'll walk through the slides with you. Cognitec, German-founded company. I'll let you kind of walk us through the heritage with Cognitec. And you did advertise with us a few years ago with the Australian Security Magazine as well. So I'll disclose that. But then you stopped. So, this is a freebie.
Oh, well, that's nice. Thank you.
Look, Cognitec, yeah?
So in general terms, Cognitec has been around for 20 years, which is a long, long time in face recognition. You talked about various players being around, but really that's since the very early origins where you were trying to invent, does facial recognition potentially work? Can you match people by their faces? Those kinds of questions. Cognitec today has offices around the world and has clients around the world. And what Cognitec does is, all it does is face recognition. So it's not combining that with other technologies. It's been doing that, and the company's been doing that for 20 years. So we've evolved. We have long-term customers that have been using our technology for over a decade. So that means we've moved with the times, we've kept and retained those customers, and we've got a footprint there, as you can see, over 50 countries, over 200 resellers, hundreds of customers.
Yeah, offices in, so Germany, US and Australia.
Yes.
And obviously the Australian office covers APAC, right?
Yep, from India through to New Zealand.
Very good. Okay, well, look, let's start with that one as to what is facial recognition. That's a good one to start with, I suppose.
Yeah, I thought just to give people a bit of a feel for what face recognition is. And obviously it's recognizing people by their faces. And in those sorts of terms, you're looking at the questions of, have I seen this person before in another identity? So you're applying for a passport. Is there somebody else out there who has the same face but a different name? If that's the case, then potentially that's fraud. Equally, I'm renewing my passport. Is this the same person renewing that passport who got that passport in the first place? So that's a one-to-one verification scenario. That could also be, I'm at the airport, I present my passport, the photo comes out of the image in my passport, it's compared with my face, one-to-one verifying, is that the same person? And how that works is you're looking at an image, and first of all, you find a face in the image. Does that appear to be a person? Does it have eyes, nose, mouth? And then distilling that down into the landmarks of particular features of a face, quality assurance to check that the face looks okay, and then converting that using today machine learning, convolutional neural networks into, can I distill that to a template, into a feature vector where I can compare those vectors for a degree of similarity and to get a probability score that these are the same people. So that's how the technology has evolved. It's gone from measuring distances to using neural networks to predict faces and to take training data to put all of that together to the point where it's unequivocally more accurate than humans doing the same thing.
And is it, I suppose there's a few sort of balls in the air with it in terms of, I mentioned storage, before, and the video analytics and the capability. And then we've got at the edge processing as well on the actual sort of camera. And then we've got the higher resolution of the cameras now that they can really come down at a pixel level. Are the algorithms the same, but the technology is getting better, or are algorithms also changing and adapting or overlaying each other?
Yeah, algorithms change and adapt. We put out a new algorithm about every year. We're currently on release 14, right. But we use the same algorithm across all of our products. So it turns out for us, whether you're comparing passports, which are still photos, or you're comparing poorly lit, blurry video images, it's the same underlying algorithm that's there. And that's kind of like humans are the same. If I'm a human, I'm looking at a face the same way, and machines are, the algorithms are mimicking that kind of process.
And likewise, much like the human brain, it requires the database to refer back to in order to create the identification, right? We don't recognize someone we've never met before, but once we've met them, it's in the
Yeah.
brain, then we can understand and sort of recognize.
So if I have you enrolled in my database, I can say, yes, I've got Chris.
Yep.
And if I don't have you enrolled in the database, so I can say, well, I've got a male who's wearing glasses, who doesn't have a beard, and who's 40-something, right?
I understand that can also start to say, and he might be a bit grumpy too.
Or he's smiling.
Well, I can change quite quickly. But is that something else that your systems are doing in terms of happy, sad, and potential moods?
Well, emotion's an interesting thing, right? Sure, you can tell if someone's smiling because you can look at the change in facial contours there. But can I tell if someone's angry? Do I have two Italians having a conversation, or do I have a potential fight going on? That culture comes into it. And so when you're trying to do behavioral analytics, you've got to that's a cultural context as well.
And is it coming down to just that basic image recognition? Maybe talk us to this particular slide.
Yeah, I want to talk to the slide. So the previous slide was really saying that how do you know two people are the same? And you can say, okay, I've got two women here, and but there's a lot of difference there. And you've got long hair, you've got all of these things that influence people about, have I seen that person before? So have I seen the person before? You think, oh yeah, she's got long hair, but if her hair's up, well, okay, maybe I'm not so sure. And whether you grow beards or you don't, all of that influences you as a human in how you decide to recognize somebody.
That is the same person, is it not?
Yeah, that is the same person.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can say, yep, that's the same person, that's fine. But think about the problem at a more macro level. If you look at the next slide, then what am I looking at here? And the question here is, which are muffins and which are chihuahuas?
Yeah, it's a good photo, actually.
And that photo kind of encapsulates the whole problem, because a human looking at that and said, Chris, how many chihuahuas do you see in that shot?
Right? Do I count? Yeah, there's a few.
You can see a few, but you can't tell me whether it's 12 or 14.
Yeah.
Without looking at each one in detail, thinking about it, coming up with an answer. And so training and learning about how those differences are made is what comes into face recognition, and not so easy to do when you look at it in that kind of context.
And it does come down to the angle, lighting, all of that. Does that play much of an importance these days? Or again, we mentioned sort of camera resolution, and often, we put cameras, like say number plate recognition, but same with facial recognition. We do put dedicated cameras for those purposes. It's not like every camera can start to pick up faces. You want a lower camera, the angle's better, and you want to pick up as much of that face as possible, right?
Not necessarily is my answer.
Very good.
So, look, technology has evolved a lot and it's changed things a lot. So yes, 5-10 years ago, you did want to have a dedicated camera focused on the person. Perhaps maybe it's a couple of meters high, 2.5 meters high, and you're looking at the person and you're looking at straight on angles and you want perfect lighting conditions. And like anything else, that's optimal. Yes, you can potentially get better results, the better quality of image that comes in, the higher resolution image, the goodness of the lighting and so on. Well, yeah, sure, you match those and you get good results. But technology has improved to the point, just if you look at what technology has happened on your phone and how well it takes photos. So you can use any camera really to capture a face and recognize a face today. And so where and how you use cameras is more of a functional thing. If you're doing surveillance of a building, well, you might have the cameras in the ceiling. Well, that's pretty useless for face recognition if you're looking at the top of people's heads. So yes, you want to position a camera so you see the faces, and that can mean that therefore those cameras are in places that are not necessarily optimal for surveillance. If you're around the building, you want them in choke points and where people are walking. If it's entrance to the building, well, it's probably going to be the same kind of camera doing surveillance of people walking in or not. So really today there isn't a barrier to capturing a face. So it comes down to how can you capture the best face to get you the best outcome that you desire. So people walking into a building, recognizing them, then yes, put the camera in front of them, get those matches. That will increase your likelihood that you don't get a false match or a issue raised.
And then it's a matter of, you mentioned, you might be able to get a face from multiple cameras. It's a matter of, particularly if it's one system, being able to match all of those cameras that saw that face as well. So that gives you a sort of a pathway that person may have followed through a facility or an area. You can start to go back and match.
So the other one I was, the person people coming down an escalator, and the lady in the blue top, I have matched against a watch list of her. And so I can say, yes, I've seen this person come in. Now that person could be someone who you have banned from entering that facility. It could equally be a VIP customer who you want to provide a special service to. So, and facilitate what they do. Or it could just be someone who, for whatever reason, you're on the lookout for.
How much of the application for sort of business operations and marketing, service delivery and the like are you seeing? Has that been a change from sort of the traditional security approach and identify the bad actor to the switch over to, wow, this is a powerful tool we can use for business services?
Yes. So face recognition really started with government and really started in a big way after September 11 when it became important to verify people across borders and have ways of doing that, but also with the increase in air travel, being able to automatically process people. If we look at Australian airports now, you'd see that 90% of people are automatically processed through SmartGate. And so that takes loads off customs officers and allows them to concentrate on the people who aren't automatically verified, and risk management allows them to provide additional capabilities around those. So government, whether it be passports, driver's licenses, visas, anything around identifying people was the majority of the business and still is the majority of the business. But commercial areas have increased and have increased around looking for people who might be banned from those facilities or they're on watch lists. Things like the bombing outside stadiums in Paris and Manchester has meant stadiums have had to consider how they're managing people and patrons and watch lists and so on. And then as soon as they start doing that, then they can get the statistics out of it. How many males, how many females, what are the general ranges, the analytics, all become a corollary of that. But there are also clients who just use the technology anonymously. So I might have a restaurant chain and I want to look across all of that chain, what's the demographics coming in, and aggregate those statistics. And the difference of, you can do that with people counters, but what face recognition does that people counting technology doesn't do, that's like you just have a laser beam, how many people have come in.
Yeah.
But face recognition will allow you to subtract the employees who walk through there and subtract the people who have come in multiple times. So you get a much more accurate statistic out of that because you avoid that.
I was just thinking, when particularly, I know it's at Singapore Airport, but I'm starting to see it elsewhere, service desks and service counters where you press the happy face, sad face, medium face on how happy you are as you're leaving. Is there any kind of research? Because as people are clicking those, I'm wondering if you could also do some research and match what they look like when they're clicking happy versus sad as well. I can imagine there's would be a capability.
They're probably looking confused which button.
The other one I had is, where is the processing happening? I've got two questions. One is your competition, and I wouldn't mind getting a sense of the market overview and where Cognitec sits, and maybe some of the Chinese technology coming through as well that you're seeing. And then the other one is the processing at the edge versus processing at the server, and the lag in latency issues as well in terms of importance. It's okay when you've got the database and then you can just run your analytics through that. But at the edge processing for things like facial recognition, how common is that happening?
Okay, so the competitive landscape, so NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US, government organization, they run vendor comparison tests. There is around 200 algorithms that they are currently running. If I went back 10 years, that number might have been 10 to 20. So what's mushroomed into there is a whole bunch of startups. The majority of those startups are out of China and Russia, and they'll participate in those tests, but when you drill down to those companies, they won't have a website, they won't have a presence outside the country, it's difficult to identify whether they exist, and while their results might be high, you don't know if they've optimized those results to suit the types of images that NIST are testing, that they've trained that data on the general population, haven't respected privacy protocols, all of those kinds of things. So you have to come down to how many tier one companies are there around who are in multiple countries, who have a presence, who have bona fide credible clients, government clients, and so on. And that number is still back around a dozen. So from a competitive point of view, if you're right up there in terms of the NIST results, accuracy isn't an issue for buying now. Technology around face recognition is a mature technology. You're going to apply exactly the same criteria to buying any IT product.
Right.
You know, do I know the company? Do I do business with them? Have they got good references? Have they written a credible RFP response? All of them.
I take it. Yeah. Well, on that, you come through the channel. You sell to the channel. Or you sell direct.
Both.
Okay.
Depends on the client. So a lot of government clients buy directly from us because they want face recognition. They have their own IT departments, so they're going to buy that and integrate it. Or we're going to go through systems integrators or reseller channels and we particularly do that in countries like India where we don't have an office. So they will take on our technology and training and respond to the tenders and support the customers in their environment. And
the business model, we talked briefly off or pre-interview, you've got a couple of different business model options in terms of a license or on usage?
Yeah, really, we'll work with customers on however they want to do that. So you have a traditional purchase a perpetual license and pay annual maintenance and support, or you'll have subscription license basis, or you might have embedded in device licenses where face recognition is used for an access control hardware device. So it all depends on how that customer or how that company is reselling to their own customers, and you fit in with that license environment. On your question around edge technology and not, so a lot of camera companies will put some face recognition into their camera devices, but tends to be not. It will recognize a face, it will do some basic matching, but it's not scalable to match millions of records and do it at that high level. So it becomes a little bit more of a gimmick. If you want to do it properly, you're going to go to a distributed environment. So at an edge level, the edge is really a small device in a shop, and that might run what comes into there, and you aggregate the results into a back-end cloud or into a back-end secure on-premise solution. So at our level, it could be a one-camera solution, but ultimately our client's going to have multiple cameras and probably multiple offices, depending on how they operate.
And I take it you could have a bit of both as well. You could have some initial edge processing occurring on, maybe VIPs. You might not have a large database on that, and then it runs back through to the database and checks for potentially others and
that's right.
aggregation.
You can have a small watch list on site or at a branch office, that you're looking for. You might then do a larger back-end check across, or you're just looking for people who are frequently attending my branch, but I also want to do an overall aggregate back-end check of that. So banks might do that kind of thing. Yeah, I've got my frequent customers, but has this person appeared in another branch somewhere in my network?
Okay. Well, look, maybe just talk us through this slide, because this is probably a good example where, certainly here in New South Wales, we've got the digital license now as well. Yeah. And we're talking here, and it's a good segue through to David, where we talk about GovPass and what was it, seamless traveller type stuff as well. This is okay. Maybe across Australia, what have you seen maybe with the police agencies, driver's licenses, federal agencies like passports, giving them to intelligence agencies, and then matching these to general systems that they might have, digital systems with faces, might be social media posts and anything else digital. They can start to match that.
Okay, so
what's the trend?
What's the trend? So there's a lot of different trends here involved in your question, right? So,
you got 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
Well, I think in fact you can hold it. Just maybe give us an overview, and then we'll hold that. I think for later.
You've got what government is doing around verification of identity. So here I might have a driver's license or a passport. Yeah, and speaking from Cognitec, we do have the largest footprint in government in Australia. So most government agencies are using our technology for identification of people and verification of people.
Right.
And so, yes, you do that. Now, you could distill this to say, yes, I've got a identity document that's trusted. I've got a photo in that document, and I'm comparing that photo with the border photo I take, or I'm enrolling through a mobile device like my phone, and comparing that against a back end and getting a check there. Now, when you come to what police are doing, then you bring in a whole different level of why might I use face recognition? You could use it to identify missing children, and yeah, I wouldn't mind having that. Or dementia patients who have got out of a facility and you want to try and identify that person. Flagging fraud. There's a lot of positive aspects for doing that, but what is important is around privacy, informed consent. Have you taken data? In overseas, there's been a lot of situations where the data has been captured without permission, or agencies have used data that has been scraped from social media to identify people. Well, is that okay? Have you had those people's permission? You have to actually understand what the privacy impacts of that are. And again, as a mature supplier, then you understand those things and you follow those protocols, and you follow protocols like the data protection GDPR in Europe, for example.
Yeah.
So, which is the sorts of things we do. So that's a difference between that and the unscrupulous kind of vendors who are around there and might be used. So police agencies, work within, especially in Australia, they're working within privacy guidelines and protocols and constraints in what they do. They're not just randomly, searching stuff around.
Got it. Maybe let's finish. I'm just conscious of time. We'll bring on David, but occlusions. So how are the systems running with masks at the moment? Still operating as per normal, or it's a hindrance?
So really, there was a reset around the start of COVID, right? There's no business. Everyone's in lockdown. What do we do?
Yeah, you don't need facial recognition. No one's moving around, right?
That's right. But it's also pretty obvious that face masks, like pandemic-style face masks, have exploded in the Western world. So where we would never be, it would be pointless for us to be doing mask searches in Australia or in the US, then that's completely changed today. So intuitively, faces always had to do with a beard. So yes, I happen to have a beard today. If I didn't have a beard before, I was still required to match that. And if you think about how faces work, the most accurate distance is the number of pixels between the eyes in terms of differentiating people around the world. That varies a lot. Those kinds of values are a signature basis for looking for people. And then where might the tip of a nose be? So in previous technology, you had to see the tip of a nose. Now you can predict where it might be and where some of those other features might be. So by using machine learning, you apply it to the matching algorithms, but what we've now also done is said, not just to the matching algorithms, we need to apply that to how we find faces in the first place, because you may well expect a face to have a mask on it now, and it may not have probably won't have a mask on it against the watch list we're looking at. So a lot of R&D by us in particular, we've put into matching people with and without masks, and those results now we're releasing a current algorithm. It's as accurate as matching people with masks as our best algorithm 3 years ago was matching people without masks. So
interesting.
That match rate's pretty close now, so that's what's happening.
Great. Well, look, we might just fly through these facial recognition for security, obviously ID management, law enforcement, video surveillance, logical access control, physical access and border control, photo indexing, and the like. So there's a lot of applications, and it has been a very interesting piece of technology to follow. I mean, I've been doing this too long, but as it came through, you could see sort of those planets aligning, storage, processing, resolution, and then the smarts around the algorithms and everything else that comes together on that. And the business case for facial recognition is there as well, not just from government, but commercial applications.
And I think that's the big thing around commercial applications. It's not just surveillance. It's not just government ID. It's now matching photos on cruise ships that have been taken on that trip and getting all my photos together.
And it's all that other type of, I won't call it metadata, but the extra data, male, female, the counting and all those types of things that are coming into play make it very interesting. So this is the final slide. You've got a layered security approach slide next, but this is kind of the platform as we see it, right?
Yeah, I'm just really making the point here. You have dashboard overviews of your live camera feeds and your watch lists and your matching. So you get that kind of data. If you're doing still photo ID matching, then you're matching photos and drilling down on things. So there's a lot of things you can do and be informed about and customize to your own environment around events. Employee access control has become much more important. That's our biggest market right now because people don't want to be touching badges. They want to be recognized when they walk into their building with or without a mask. So we're getting, particularly in Asia, a lot of devices and employee access control opportunities happening there. So yeah, from that whole perspective, there's continued business there and continued business in the pandemic world.
Yeah. Well, look, stay on if you can. Really appreciate your time. We'll give you a good plug there. The face recognition company, Terry Hartmann, Vice President for the Asia Pacific. And otherwise, you can go to cognitec.com. Terry, I'll put you backstage and then I'll bring on David. And then I think I'll kind of at least grab you for 5 minutes at the end for a general discussion on trends and those types of things. We try to cover a huge topic in 5 minutes. That's how we try to do it. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Talk soon. Okay, so Cognitec, very interesting. And now we're going to move over to GovPass, the Trusted Digital Identity Framework, with David Chadwick, Director of Identity and Biometrics with Unisys. If you happen to be watching, please press like and let us know where you are in the world. And also, if you have any questions or comments, it'll be interesting to see what the audience is thinking and on this particular topic. This one's a good one. David Chadwick with Unisys. David, thanks for joining us.
Very welcome. Thanks very much for having us.
I thought we had a pre-interview discussion and kind of got similar law enforcement backgrounds. Unfortunately, it just makes us sound and look old, mate. I'm sorry. But yeah, maybe we'll start with your background. I think that gives a lot of context to how you are approaching this sort of GovPass topic and the government's initiative with GovPass.
Absolutely. So, like yourself, my first half of my career was in law enforcement. And in fact, my involvement back to face recognition of sorts was being one of the two people that invented the first computer-based replacement for the Penry PhotoFit system, which in fact Western Australia Police took up.
Okay.
We're using old Commodore Amigas, and we put together pieces of faces and make them correct.
Mate, I actually think that's before my time, to be honest. I was in the 90s.
Thanks for making me feel old. So, but I moved into federal government over here, and I've spent a lot of time in immigration and the passport office. And for the last 15 years, I've been focusing on identity and the role that biometrics plays in it. And I make that real emphasis in the fact that it's about identity.
Yeah.
Who are you and how much do we care? And the role, very important role that biometrics plays. So I've run the digital business for immigration. I've helped set up their biometric capabilities, and I've worked in the Australian Passport Office looking after their biometric capabilities as well for 28 million faces. And then I've been out with Unisys running their Identity and Biometrics program for the last 2 years, and here we are.
Maybe talk us through the Unisys Identity program as well, just to get a scope of what you're doing, because you are working with police agencies as well. Whether it's in this space, I'm not too sure.
Indeed. Well, we work with New South Wales Police with our partners, Mark 43, in relation to their COPS replacement. But Unisys has been involved with identity and biometrics for about as long as Cognitec, actually about the last 20 years. And it's been formally announced that we are the people who run the Enterprise Biometric Identification System for the Department of Home Affairs. And in fact, we've been working in Home Affairs now for some 14 years, from their very early foray into biometrics around the illegal foreign fishers, right through now to their move into the identity-centric model of the future. We've also in Australia been working with Queensland Transport and Main Road since 2009, I think, around the biometric acquisition and matching capability for their driver's license, and now how that's evolving into the new facial verification service capability.
So there's a lot going on around that identity. You mentioned identity, but it's also that biometrics tracking. And Terry, I forgot to mention things like gait and other biometrics that Cognitec might be doing, but we'll cover that, I think, with you as well, David. Maybe talk us what GovPass is doing and also where it's at. I have heard it, but I think you're right in the notes that I was provided was the Australian public isn't really aware of what's going on. So give us the lowdown.
And that's the big issue. So if I look at the current situation at the moment, I am required sometimes to establish my identity. Right? I might be opening up, it might be regulatory, it might be opening up a bank account or whatever. If I go into Centrelink to claim unemployment benefits, I have to establish my identity to a certain level. Right? And when I'm dealing with government, it's not just to what we might say level of assurance 2. It's a little bit more than that. It's about the risk that this transaction creates. Crossing the border, the highest level of risk. So right now, in a physical sense, I need to establish that I am David Chadwick in order to conduct certain transactions. And so to do that, I will present a credential. It might be my driver's license, it might be my passport. And the passport, I know from having worked in there for 3.5 years, an awful lot of work goes into establishing that I am a unique individual and that I am entitled to a passport. So this is a solid credential that says I'm David Chadwick, accepted the world over. So now let's jump to online. We want to do more and more business online. Lockdown, pandemics, the whole customer experience. How do I establish that I am David Chadwick when I'm online? And up until now, we've had the MyGov program where it was a level of assurance 2. Right? There was what we call proof of record ownership. I could answer a few questions that only I should know the answer to. It was a pretty good chance that it was me. Okay. What GovPass is looking to do is to take it up to level of assurance 3. So where they're very confident that it's David. How they're going to do that? It's by use of the facial verification service, where I can present a credential virtually. And let's take the example of a passport. and I capture my facial image, I put in my passport details. That information goes through a very secure routing hub down into the passport office, and it matches in their system. It doesn't leave their system.
Yep.
They're not sending my information anywhere. And they say, yes, David Chadwick does have a passport. That is his facial image. Boom. So the whole idea about GovPass is to make use of the credential that you have already to assert your identity. Does that make sense?
It does. And we covered off, there was a vulnerability report on the MyGov app as well. And we covered that on a podcast. And it's maybe an obscure vulnerability, but through that, we learnt that they are also going to provide this as a level of assurance for other identity applications as well, potentially. So move beyond just government, but other organisations can then start to accept digital identities based on, say, the GovPass system. Is that where the trend is heading, or is
Absolutely.
it not there yet?
So the aim is to have, without having a centralised identity capability, which Australia has indicated they don't want, it's to make use of these federated identity models and come up with a centralised credential, but one that does not pass through the origins of the identity credential. And there's been this report as to the complexity that this government identity exchange has introduced. And I won't get into that because it is a theoretical weakness, and I think it can be addressed by the DTA with policy and with security measures. But the principal issue comes about of, it's actually, and I've been involved with the development of this from my government career, and I've watched it with close interest. It's a good system. It is so much better than what we've got now that it's not funny, and it's in fact world leading in many regards. The issue is, as you've raised, one of trust.
Yeah.
Right? I know about it. I know about it intimately, and I trust it, and I know how it works. Most people, 26% of people that we survey, we do this Unisys Security Index, and it's one of the longest running.
We run it.
Excellent. Right, been running for a long time in a lot of countries, 15 countries now. But 26% of people that we surveyed, and it was a statistically significant survey, have actually heard about
a quarter.
A quarter. Yeah. Of those, just under a half, 48%, actually knew the details that I just told you there.
Yeah.
Right?
They must have listened to our podcast with Unisys CISO. We did it with your Chief Information Security Officer and spoke about the report. Look, it is pretty low, and I don't hear the government talking much about it. And nothing personal against Peter Dutton, the Minister for Home Affairs, but he doesn't have a great reputation in terms of trust, and he's not that popular, to be honest. So, hence why he's probably not the lead spokesperson for the government. Is that who's driving this? Is Department of Home Affairs? Is that the responsible agency?
This has been driven, in fact, this has been in progress for the last 5 years. So it actually predates the formation of Home Affairs. This has been a long-term strategic direction.
This is former Department of Immigration.
Yep. In fact, it was Attorney General's was one of the key drivers of this before they got mogged into Home Affairs. So this isn't something that somebody suddenly come up with an idea. This actually has been a really good long-term strategic direction. And that's what makes us a little bit more frustrating, because we know from our from the survey that there's a lot of people who are comfortable using their biometrics, to unlock their phone. I think people understand they're using biometrics, either their fingerprint or their face, right? People want to conduct business online. We know that.
But will you have a choice? Once you start to access government services, this is the process that you have to go through. And I've gone through that. I use MyGov and through the ATO with our companies. So, you don't really have a choice. You just go through it, and it's one of those things, you just have to trust that process. And as you say, if you want to get your tax return back, you're gonna do it. I suppose it is that key term of trust, and they do. In fact, there was another survey that came out today that trust of institutions is had a bit of a spike upwards during COVID, and trust is increasing. I suppose trust is only breached when there is an issue, and that's when it becomes an issue. So as long as the system works, as you say, it's a good system, world leading, it should be fine, then that's not a problem. But it's that trust in general government technology initiatives that has been an issue in the past, right?
Trust is slow to build and quick to depart.
Extremely.
And this is why it is so important for government to, while they're working on the policy, the legislation, and these technical issues, that's fine. That needs to happen. They also need to have a really strong communication. You know yourself, any organisation, if you're going to introduce change, you've got to have a change management program. That's what I think is actually missing here.
Right.
Okay. All the surveys have said people understand, and a lot of people want a transaction online, right? They want to be able to conduct secure transactions. People are comfortable with biometrics. Ask anybody who's walked across the border and just be able to present your passport, stand for a photo, walk through. We are the envy of many countries around the world. So biometrics is fine when people understand what's being used for, people understand the need for identity. What they need to understand is the detail and understand that, no, it's not perfect. Right? And I know our size always says it's not a matter of, if you get hacked, it's when. So it's a matter of having in place the procedures, the safety capabilities, that identity resolution aspects. And government needs to get out there and really start explaining to people openly, honestly, and simply what's going on and why, and what's the benefit to them. Because once people know the benefit, they will come on board. And you raised one quick point. You need to have an alternate channel. Okay, my parents will never use an online system. Right, it's an alien concept to them.
Yep.
So you need to be able to offer that alternate solution.
There is that transition process that we have to go through. Maybe just before we bring Terry back on, we'll talk about sort of biometric technology and where things are heading. And we might put your thinking caps on as well as where we might be in sort of 5-10 years and sort of comparative systems in China. Where's the Seamless Traveller project at? And does this link in as well to digital identities and how this will sort of morph into a larger identity system?
So I come back to my initial statement of identity management is about who are you and how much do I care. So if I look at the Seamless Traveller program, and I can't obviously talk on behalf of the government, but the concept is, and it was only just over a year ago that we were trying to figure out how we were going to deal with the massive increase in numbers coming through the airport. So it'd be fair to say that the pressure has come off just somewhat. Yeah. However, at some point in time, we're going to get back to travel. So it comes down to, and this is where some people get uncomfortable, is understanding that I am traveling. And so the various players that are involved in that travel, from the airline, the airports, the baggage handlers, and the governments whose borders I'm crossing, need to know. So a lot of really good work's being done by IATA at the moment and ICAO. And I was involved in that from the standards perspective around a digital passport. How can I send my passport ahead of my journey to the US, the UK government? They're going to get it anyway. So if I can send it ahead and they can do their risk analytics and go, yeah, David's okay, we're going to facilitate his entry. Well, now it comes down to, as I'm approaching and there's 5,000 people in the airport, is Cognitec face recognition, is any other technology good enough to be able to say, there's David, I'm going to let him walk across the border without even stopping. Yeah. Now, I actually think that the technology is getting up there, and I've been involved with Cognitec for many years, where you can actually do that as long as you've got all the other ecosystems in place. The fact that they know I'm coming, that it's a trusted identity, etc. So I think trust is going to be the really key driver going forward, and being able to confirm identity to the high enough level.
Is now a potential opportunity to introduce, say, a system like Seamless Traveller while there's very limited travel, and then once it all kicks back up, it's already, the changes have already occurred?
100% agree, right? And I know that IATA and ICAO are really pushing for the digital travel initiative and how that might go with the vaccinations. And I would certainly be hoping that government is really looking now at the infrastructure policy processes in place so that this can be trialled, as you say, while there's very little travel.
Yeah.
I just wanted to come back to one of your last comments to Terry about the police use and the government use. Having been a senior government person, governments, police, agency, whatever, are governed by legislation, by policy, and by business practice. Okay, and I think we can always take heart in the fact that anytime there is a bit of a mistake made or whatever, the fact that we live in a free enough society that it's actually reported and brought to people's attention. I think people can actually take a lot of heart around that. And government is bound by legislation.
Yeah, look, it's you mentioned vaccines, which is an important one as well. I'm just trying to add. It did work. What I'll do is I'll bring Terry. Are you okay to come in? Give us a nod if you're okay. And I'll get rid of that for now and just make it pretty. Great. No spelling errors. Yeah, look, let's finish off. Thank you so much for that, David, and very interesting, and particularly with that background that you've got. We've kind of touched on two key areas. One is the travelling public and then the risk associated with that when we move back into travel. And then the other one is things like vaccines and rolling these out. And this is where sort of identity becomes critical and matching sort of behaviour and, vaccine is one. You need sort of two or three and on an ongoing basis. They might as well be capturing that and understanding who's doing that. Could be some sort of, I don't know, maybe someone trying to beat the system somewhere as well. And then obviously travel risk is a given. What are the trends in this? David, you touched on it, but Terry, do you see any limitations on technology to solve this? That scenario of I'm traveling to San Francisco on tomorrow, I do an identity check, and basically I check in always, 24 hours before. That process should already just have me just waiting at the lounge in San Francisco. Really, that seamless traveller is doable today, or it will be?
No, it is all doable today. It's and really, if you're talking about trends, the largest trend around face recognition in the last 12 months has been remote onboarding of people, which means I can't go into my bank branch, so I'm applying online. How can I verify that person biometrically? I can't do it with fingerprints. I can't do it with iris patterns across mobile phones, so face recognition is the way to do it. That is face recognition accurate enough? Right now, today, it would get wrong about 800 people in 1 million.
Wow.
Right? And so rather than me saying 0.08%, that gives you an idea of just how accurate it is. And that leads into your travel area, because remote onboarding to a bank, really seamless travel, it starts with me buying my ticket. And if you capture the face when you're buying the ticket, and that identity is the person who gets in the taxi at an airport overseas, then you have that linkage all the way about how that's happened. And, the passport's one of the tokens you're using along that process. A secure vaccination certificate might be another token there. It's about, you talk about layered security and putting all of those things together, but it's becoming ubiquitous. So if I now am carrying my latest iPhone around and I'm just kind of holding my phone out there and using Apple Pay with my face, then bang, it's seamless. It's easier than getting out a credit card and tapping. Yep. You're not touching anything. And so that trend there, which happens to use face recognition, that is where you're going to end up looking forward through the airport. I'm just walking through, right? And technology gets better. Security screening now. We don't have to take our laptops out if we travel from Canberra to Sydney. And so that will become seamless. Our whole goal is to have, or the world's goal is to have travel like it used to be. You got on the plane, the hostesses and stewards recognised you, and you got to your end. The only difference here is you have this trusted infrastructure that's recognised.
I think the other one would be, David, in terms of the opportunity to opt in other applications. So Terry mentioned, say, Uber or your mobile device, and thinking about that travel journey, you might catch a taxi or an Uber. So you opt in for an extra layer of identity. So from an Uber, you know that you're coming from that home address. That address is already known, and you can kind of contribute to the identification process and then reduce your risk, and you kind of get sort of separated to very low risk and you're through. Is that kind of the thinking as well?
Look, absolutely. It's I describe the identity as an onion. You can just add more and
Correct,
more
yep.
layers to it. So what some people would call metadata. Did I book my ticket? As Terry said, capture my face when I buy the ticket, when I apply for the visa. Is my phone associated with this? How can we actually take some of the metadata and really start looking at reducing the risk? Because border crossing is all about risk management.
Yeah.
Are you who you say you are? Are you coming here for a lawful purpose? Okay?
And it is those things, because the phones are pretty much like a wearable these days as well, and we're going to be moving into things like wearable technology, even down into things like implants are already occurring as well. Is that the trend, do you think? I'm sorry we are three old white guys talking, just for it's pretty obvious, but put your cap on what you've seen over the last 20 years and then forward out just 10 years or 20 years, and what we're seeing, things like in China and the like. Is it something to be scared of, or accept and embrace?
Well, I think your phone is wearable technology, right?
Correct.
You don't go anywhere without it, and it's doing all of this stuff today that you would never imagine you could have done not very long ago. If you look at employee access to buildings now, you want to be able. You used to walk in, the security guard would recognise you, and you'd go to your desk. And we're just moving to the same thing. You walk in, you might have your phone. Yes, that's the person who got their phone, but you don't have the loss of a pass and someone else potentially getting in because you're recognised by your face. And it's opt-in. I can leave my phone at home if I want to. And
don't forget it, otherwise you won't be able to function.
No, you won't be able to function, but you can still do most. You can still go about your business. And yeah, sure, people will choose to have wearable technology, and they can opt in to do that, and they might decide that that's easy for them. And so that's just technology evolving. I think the whole thing around technology we have to have in perspective here is technology will continue to evolve. Banning things you're concerned about or worried about is not the answer. It's you have to work with legislation, privacy, what's fair and reasonable, and all of those sorts of things. Not take a heavier-handed approach. But yeah, these things will become more and more ubiquitous. And just like cash has disappeared almost now, and that has been accelerated through COVID. We're living in 5 years hence world today because of COVID when it comes to how you operate your finances with your phone.
Okay, well, look, we've run out of time. That was a fascinating episode, for want of a better term. But gents, I'll cut it short there because I do a brief. And in fact, my next report of the day is the state of digital trust. With Octa's put out a report, so I'm going to walk through a couple of things from that. But look, thank you so much, Terry Hartmann, Vice President Asia Pacific with Cognitec, looking at facial recognition. And David Chadwick, Director of Identity and Biometrics with Unisys, and looking at the GovPass, the Trusted Digital Identity Framework. And David, I'll put our last podcast on. I apologise, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was your CISO, and it was 2019, I think, before. It was Things Are Normal, let's put it that way. I did the interview at the Barangaroo offices with Unisys. So
Matt
very
Newfield,
good.
I think.
Beg your pardon?
Matt Newfield, I think.
You're correct. Absolutely. That was Matt. So I'll put a link in the show notes for Matt's interview. And in fact, I'll keep you guys on. Let me do it this way, and I'll move over to the report of the day, the state of digital trust. What is important for consumers when it comes to trusting a digital brand? Service reliability is out in front, and then good security policies. And I suppose from the comments from David, that kind of fits with what GovPass is. And then down the bottom is strong social media presence is really not important at all. So the State of the Digital Trust report is available on the marketplace. Point 2, there's a whole bunch in here, obviously, but I've just put out a couple, is what is the most likely to cause Australians to distrust a digital brand? And it's that top one, intentionally misusing or selling personal data, 44%. And then the brand experienced a data breach recently is also 16%. And just for interest, third is causing inconvenience or making an error to an order. So in other words, don't get it wrong. Sort of goes back up to that reliability. So look, that's available on the marketplace. In fact, I think it's the second or third report. So if you just go to marketplace.com, it'll be there. And otherwise, that is it for today. Thank you so much, gents. I'll just turn that off. For those that might be interested, we've come out with a merchandise brand. This is for cybersecurity awareness, looking at the main APT actors. And we've started with China, Russia, and India. So we have the panda, the Russian bear, and the Indian tiger. So check those out. And let's see how they go. Welcome your constructive feedback on them. But again, if they go well, we'll come out. There's about 10 to 12 different APTs that we can keep doing. So that was for interest. So look, gents, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your time this week, and have a great weekend.
Okay.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks
See
all.
you later.
Cheers.
Okay.
Bye-bye.